Pleased to say we're joined by Julia Davies, angel investor and member of Patriotic Millionaires. Good to see you. Thank you
Morning.
for coming in. Also, very seasonally attired as well.
Well, yeah, I've got to mention that you need to ask me where my dress is from.
Where is your dress from?
It's from a charity shop, which is what I basically answer when anyone asks me where my clothes are from. And it's very topical because it's a fantastic place to get your Christmas presents, particularly any novelty Christmas stuff, because you've got to remember that a novelty Christmas dress or jumper, it's not just for Christmas, because it will last longer than you. It'll be lasting for centuries because, of course, they're all synthetic these days.
Bottles,
so,
right?
Absolutely, the best place to get them from is for your charity shop because you've got the triple whammy. You're supporting local charities or national charities. You're keeping things out of landfill. And, of course, you know, you're just keeping things in circulation, which is just so much more sustainable.
And you can find a great piece with gingerbread people.
It's just so much fun
It's
because, you know,
fun.
it's
kind of envious, to be honest. Me in my dowdy suit, just sitting here in my suit and tie. I'm being told I look great in my ear. You're paid to say that.
You look fantastic.
Let's talk about the papers, shall we? Talk to me about page, I think, 19 of the Eye, and this kind of story about a disaster that left Kent without clean water.
Yeah, well, this is really sort of poignant because a couple of weeks ago I was at the National Emergency Briefing in Westminster and I listened to an expert from the Met Office talking about how we are now experiencing the least extreme weather that we will ever experience.
The least extreme?
The least extreme weather.
The least worst?
Yeah, because we are now in a situation, and this story absolutely illustrates it, we're going from one crisis directly into another, so we're not able to sort things out. So we're talking about towns here that went from a hosepipe ban directly into flooding, and this water issue was caused by the fact that our sort of increasingly dry summers are causing droughts, which means that water levels and reservoirs are going down. So we're basically ending up with the yucky bit of water at the bottom of reservoirs, and this caused, you know, like toxic water. So this was a town that was without clean water for 5 days. So we are in a situation now, unless we sort of really start taking climate change seriously, which is what, you know, the Met Office are telling us that we need to do, this is going to be where we are. And unless we start trying to sort of minimise these problems and adapt to them, we're constantly going to be on the back foot. So everything that we need to do to sort this out is going to address other issues as well. But it's a false saving. Every time, you know, how long we put off dealing with these things properly, it's just going to cost us more. And this story just illustrates it perfectly. So I live in Dorset, and earlier this year, we had such massive wildfire there. We had to call in fire services from 17 different areas. And, you know, it was nearly a week before they could get that fire under control.
My kind of home county is North Yorkshire and the North York Moors. Again, the kind of wildfire that rumbled on there for weeks and weeks and disappears down into the peat, then re-emerges somewhere else. And, you know, it was then close to Fylingdales, which is a military base. And so, you know, you then kind of think, well, there's national security implications as well if all of that, you know, it's a massive radar site. And you think, these are things that we don't think of in the UK, wildfires, for example, but now are quite a common occurrence in the summer.
Absolutely, and it's great that you mentioned national security because at the National Emergency Briefing, we heard from Lieutenant General Richard Nugent, and he was talking about how climate change is one of the greatest threats to national security because it's a threat multiplier, so it makes other threats that we're facing worse. Because you think about it, you know, start dealing with, you know, having these natural disasters, then already vulnerable sites become even more vulnerable. So, you know, a difficult subject to talk about, but he said it as it is. You know, we have to face the future as it is, not as we want it to be. So we have to face and think about the threats that are coming down the road, because if we don't do that, all we're doing is leaving it later and later, and then we're just going to be, you know, less able to manage these in a way that sort of allow us to carry on living in the way that we want to live.
And we start this journey, or at that point in this journey, from a country with a pretty moderate climate. You know, we're not one of those countries that already experiences some of the extremes that the planet's used to. And for those that have even more kind of extreme or marginal land masses, it's going to get even tougher and even worse. And then we can bring into the whole conversation about migration and economics and development and all of the challenges, even just feeding people at some point. You know, it's a big challenge to discuss at 6:44, but you kind of got to do it, right?
It is, and I would recommend that anyone that, you know, wants to know about this, they watch those emergency briefings. They're all on YouTube. Okay. Just look up National Emergency Briefing, and if you listen to Hayley Fowler, you'll hear that we are potentially facing extremely extreme weather here in the UK unless we address this, because our ocean systems could change, and we could be facing very, very cold, like, you know, 3 months of freezing temperatures in London unless we take this seriously and start acting now.
That came out the other day, wasn't it? And, you know, Glasgow could have, and Edinburgh and Scotland could have kind of winters that last 4 months and summers that barely kind of support growing crops. And, you know, that's one iteration. It could go in a different direction. That's the challenge, isn't it? We don't quite know, in some respects, what is coming down the path. We know change is coming, but the manifestation of that change...
Exactly, and what we do know is it's going to make it very difficult to grow food, both here in the UK and also in the main places where we get our food from, particularly in the Mediterranean.
We currently live with a sense of impunity, but that maybe is passing. Let's move on to the front page of The Guardian, if we can. Visitors to the US could have to reveal 5 years of social media activity, but not just that, according to the paper. You could also be asked to provide phone numbers over the same period, email addresses in the past decade, face, fingerprint, DNA, iris biometrics, names and addresses, birth dates, birthplaces of family members, including children, required too. It's a hell of a list that potentially you're going to have to pass over now.
Yeah, that's me never going to the States again. You know,
seriously?
Oh, well, you know, I'm a member of Patriotic Millionaires. You know, we campaign about extreme wealth inequality, you know, and one of the clearest illustrations of that is the fact that we have a president of the most, you know, powerful country in the world that was put in place by mega billionaires and who is absolutely pursuing the interests of the wealthiest in society at the expense of his own people. So, you know, I talk out about that. I don't think I'm going to be welcome. And it's extremely frightening that we now have what we considered like the most civilised country in the world now implementing, which are just incredibly extreme draconian measures. And we're just treating it as if normal, and it's not normal.
There's some really interesting stats later on in the article. California tourism authorities predicting a 9% decline in foreign visits to the state this year. In LA, Hollywood Boulevard, a 50% fall in foot traffic over the summer. Las Vegas, I saw a documentary in Las Vegas, tumbleweed, and not just under the normal ones, but in terms of the number of people just walking through the halls of all the casinos, that's the word. It's just complete footfall. And apparently statistics say that residents of Canada making return trips to the US by car has dropped 36.9% in July compared to the same month in 2024. Meanwhile, commercial airline travel from Canada dropped by a quarter in July compared to the previous year. It's remarkable, the response.
But why would you risk it? You know, because, I mean, let's face it, there's been some quite funny memes out there and that kind of thing, which are not too flattering of the president. So why would you risk it for going on holiday or unless you have got to, you've got family there or you're there on business? You know, it could be not just you that's made, you know, some comment which he doesn't appreciate. It could be just someone in the family, one of your teenagers. So it's made going on holiday to the States a risky business, isn't it?
It's also potentially, you know, we've got the World Cup coming up and millions of people that are potentially going to head to the United States who might, you know, I'll be like, what did I say back in 2019? Was I complimentary or not? You know, and kind of to your point, what have the family said? Yeah. Let's move on to the Mirror, shall we? It's a story you picked out on the front page of the paper.
So this is the story about the government saying it's going to get serious on tackling homelessness. And of course, you know, homelessness isn't something that just happens. Homelessness is part of an overall picture where we have people living in extreme poverty. So we've got 1 in 3 under 5-year-olds in poverty in the UK. We have 1 million children living.
Whoa! Your flock deserve better! Not the same boring card. Send something soulful, personal, adorable. Funkettes, tell her where to go. Give a funky pigeon.com.
The big Christmas wedding was finally here.
Come on, Cully Dog.
The most wonderful festive event.
And obviously we just had what I would consider a bit of a missed opportunity in the budget, because whilst on one hand the government did restore benefits, they you know, for families where they've got more than 2 kids. On the other hand, they've continued to freeze tax thresholds, which means that the lowest workers are now ending up paying tax just because of inflation, just because their pay has gone up a little bit. And we need to look at this far more seriously, because this level of extreme wealth inequality is basically taking us back to a situation where, you know, we have children living in poverty in a very, very wealthy country, and we shouldn't just accept
wealthiest
that.
on the planet. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got, the 40 wealthiest families in the UK have got between them more wealth than the least wealthy half of all Brits. So that's, you know, that's extreme. That's not just it's always been like this, you know. It's always going to be the case that some people work hard, some people take risks, they make a bit of money. This is extreme, and it's having extreme consequences for families. These aren't stats. These are kids that basically are going to be facing this Christmas without a secure place to be at home.
And that is a situation that I think anybody would resonate with and be horrified by and would want to see addressed. And so lots of the suggestions, well, you those with the broader shoulders pay more.
Absolutely.
But then this counter argument that comes in, well, they're all going to run away. They're all going to flee the country. What do you reckon?
Well, there was a lot of false stories about that. It just doesn't stack up. People want to live somewhere for, you know, multiple reasons. And the kind of moderate increases in taxation that were being talked about, they don't make any difference whatsoever to wealthy people. You know, we're talking about families. So if you, if you tax them a bit more, that's food they can't buy, that's school shoes they can't buy, that's school clubs that their kids can't go to. So if you're someone who's extremely fortunate and has, you know, the level of wealth where, you know, you're going to be potentially affected by the wealth tax that we campaign for as a group, so that's a moderate tax on wealth above 10 million. If you've got that, you're not going to be affected by having to pay a little bit extra in tax. And so we need to stop accepting that narrative as a society, because what's that saying is that very wealthy people don't want to pay a little bit extra so that we don't have a situation where we've got 1 million kids in destitution in this country. They would rather people who are already struggling pay a bit more. Or they'd rather those kids just stay in destitution.
And what about the kind of suggestions between taxing assets and taxing income?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We've got to look at taxing wealth now, because we've got this extreme concentration of wealth, and that's been going on over a very long period of time. Because we always talk about the fact that taxation has gone up, but it hasn't gone up for everybody. So we have a situation where we have very, very wealthy people whose wealth has continued to going up during periods of time when most families, they've seen their incomes go down. So most people struggled during COVID and they had some problems. Wealthy people, their wealth went up, you know, and that is the cause behind a lot of these problems. Because, you know, one of our members, Gary Stevenson, he always talks about if people have got lots and lots of money, they've got to put that money somewhere. And part of where they put it is just buying up homes, buying up land, etc. So that puts up the price. So we now have a situation where, you know, working people, they can't afford to buy a home. Whereas, you know, I came out of uni without any debt because I'm, you know, out of that very lucky era. And I was able to buy my first home within a couple of years. Well, you know, graduates now come out, they can't even think about that for years, can they? And these are all things that are interconnected.
It's, you know, I went to university in the late 2000s, and even then you were only paying £3,000 a year, and now kind of the generation passing through 9,250. But when that was increased, universities said, well, actually, we kind of do with tuition fees going up even higher, really, to be able to kind of make up the shortfall in funding. And you're now hearing about the number of universities at risk of closure. You know, money and its benefits, but also impacts is across the spectrum a real challenge at the moment, I feel, for the economy.
But these are political choices and they're societal choices. So I would say we need to stop listening to this mantra that it's acceptable for very wealthy people to not want to contribute to just a thriving society, for keeping us going as we were going. Because you know, we had a period where we were going in the right direction, that people who came from sort of working class families could do better, could buy a home, and now we're going backwards, and that's a political choice. We don't have to do that.
Let's move on to page 5 of the Eye. Are you a fan of dark chocolate?
I love dark chocolate.
Well, this is good news, because according to a study from King's College London, the study finds links between key components in dark chocolate and staying younger for longer. We're not saying people should eat dark chocolate, more dark chocolate, but it's showing that it can give clues to healthier lives. So the paper kind of goes on to say that they looked at 1,500 people and looked at kind of biological age, actual age, and some of the kind of the elements within dark chocolate. So apparently, you know, maybe before Christmas, rejig the kind of the Christmas treats for the family, stick away from the milk, get more dark. What kind of, are you 75% dark chocolate?
I like very dark chocolate, yeah. And of course that's in tune with what we need to do, because we need to be reducing our dairy consumption. So maybe leave off the dairy and the chocolate, save it for a bit of cheese.
I'm on board with this. This is a good thought.
It's a tactic, isn't it? I just love the fact that I now have a really good excuse to have that bit of dark chocolate every day.
Dark chocolate, although I once tried 99% dark chocolate.
Oh no, that's going a bit far, isn't it?
Good heavens. It was kind of so dry it just sucks all the moisture out of your entire person.
No, you need that sweetness in there.
Yeah, you need a little bit. You need a little bit. To actually talk about Christmas, Christmas ChatGPT on the page 29 of The Guardian.
Yeah. So this is saying a lot of people are turning to AI for suggestions on their Christmas gifts. And having read this story, I would just say, don't do it. Because one of the implications of this is it's coming up with lots of recommendations to buy from the really big internet sellers. And of course, that's just going to be funding Jeff's next sort of bit of space tourism. So a lot of the recommendations are for Amazon.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, for me, I would say there's some fantastic stuff to be bought in your charity shop, and also or buy locally. Support your local high street. You know, you can buy things that are made in the UK now. So there's a fantastic company called Community Clothing. All the things on there, all made in British factories. You know, so support British business, support our high streets, and absolutely just check out your charity shops.
And to your point, we've only got about 30 seconds or so, but to your point as well about kind of sustainability and the climate, etc. Every search on AI software and tools, hugely intensive on energy, hugely intensive on water as well for calling these centres. So, you know, taking a wander down the high street is both societally beneficial, better for your health, better for the climate, better for the environment. You might not find everything. You might still need a bit of a balance to the internet. But, you know, our constant search for data and using of AI isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, your high street, you're supporting local families, aren't you? You're supporting local business, and that's your community.
Absolute pleasure to have you with us. Some good news about chocolate being good for our health, some good news about, you know, finding alternatives for your Christmas treats as well. Have a very good Christmas as well, because we won't see you before that. Pleasure to have you with us. Plenty more of the day's story.